Here we go. As the Cardinals head into a 3-game series with the Dodgers, they are consistently inconsistent. There's plenty to talk about, so let's dig in. All right, I don't have any specific stats to quote or a lot of information that I've looked up and dug into, but I just kind of want to give my take on what I've observed over the last week or so, and kind of see if that's where you guys vibe with your current status of the Cardinals. So it seems like everybody was frustrated with the lack of trades at the trade deadline. And I think, a big part of that, well, they didn't really do anything. What they did was totally, off everyone's radar and doesn't seem like it's helpful at all. They traded Jed Jerko for next to nothing, a player who is on the DL and won't pitch again this year and is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So he's not going to do anything. I think they got a rookie ball pitcher maybe, but a guy who's clearly not going to do anything for a long time, if ever. I don't think he's like a highly regarded prospect or anything. So really they just moved Jed Jerko to, I guess, help him get a better situation to play, or just get him off the books or off the 40-man. I'm not even sure. Seemed to really not make much sense from my perspective, but they had their reasons. They didn't go get a pitcher, and there were rumors that one of the guys they were interested in, Wheeler from the Mets, that the Mets were asking for either Bader or O'Neill, and the Cardinals wouldn't do that, which to me, in one sense, is a huge mistake, because I think Bader is a huge gamble moving forward. I don't think there's any guarantee that he's going to turn into even a halfway decent offensive player. We've seen what he can do defensively and on the bases, but he can't get on the bases. So his hitting is very poor and doesn't really show signs of improving. But, he could definitely turn it around. He's still young-ish. And, he needed to go down to Memphis, I think, a long time ago to get more at-bats. There was no sense sitting him on the bench. Once he got benched, there was no reason for him to be up here. O'Neill, along those lines, is a little better. To me, his prospects look better than Bader's. He's proven he can hit home runs at this level. I think he hits for a little better average. He seems to have recently started spraying the ball, all parts of the field. So I do think, and, even though he's not great defensively, I don't think he's a liability in the field, though the team seems to think so. They've been, well, he's nursing an injury right now, but even before that, it seemed like they weren't putting him in the outfield as often. I don't know. I don't think he's that bad, and he's definitely fast on the bases. Seems like a smart player. So, I would have traded Bader for sure if he was, available, or if he was being talked about for Wheeler. Now, on the other side of that, though, Wheeler is an injury risk for sure. He's been on the DL, whatever, for multiple times in his career for extended periods, and he's just kind of having an okay season anyway, so it's not like he's this ace that we were going to go get. He probably would have been our number 5 guy, but we need a number 5 at this point, the way Waka and Ponce de Leon have been pitching. So, I can't blame the team too much for not giving up a piece for Wheeler, but I would have given up a piece for somebody, and they didn't even really seem willing to want to do that. There were plenty of pitchers that were rumored that actually didn't get traded to anybody, not just the Cardinals. Lance Lynn, Wheeler, Bumgarner, Leake. These are all guys who were heavily rumored to be traded and didn't get traded. So the question would be, why were there so many teams needing pitchers and those guys didn't get moved? And to me, kind of the obvious answer is that the teams that had those players were asking for way too much in return. And to me, that's been the trend for a few years now anyway, is that, a halfway decent player is getting you a haul of top prospects in return. And we did see that with some guys that got moved this year. But, I think you really got to be careful with what you're giving up for who. You don't want to just take a guy who's a rental or a guy who's past his prime or a guy who's an injury risk or a guy who's just going to give you innings, but maybe not, quality innings. You don't just give up all your farm for that. And I think teams are realizing that or already knew that, and they just weren't being baited in. Some other teams did and have done that in the recent past, and I think it's become this trend where teams expect way too much. So once that sort of turns around, you'll probably expect to see the Cardinals getting back involved in trades, but really they haven't been involved in meaningful trades for a long time during the season, especially. And then in the offseason, the big one was Goldschmidt, obviously. And looking back, that has turned out to be a pretty good deal for the Diamondbacks. Even though Weaver is, I think, still currently injured, he was pitching well for them, and I don't think it's a serious injury, and he projects to come back and pitch well. And Carson Kelly is their starting catcher and has done, good enough, and I think is going to just keep improving. So I don't think they're too upset about the trade. I mean, obviously looking at what Goldschmidt has done and how inconsistent he's been, underperforming, the Diamondbacks would definitely say they got the better end of it. But long term, I do think it'll work out well for both sides. But anyway, the Cardinals are just not a team that goes after and gives up, 4 or 5 decent players. That being said, they made it seem like they were going to be aggressive going into the trade deadline. They said that winning streak that the team went on before the trade deadline definitely gave them reason to be aggressive, and they made that clear. Maybe they made it too clear, and the teams were trying to fleece them for everything they could. But I believe Mozeliak said right at the end of the trade deadline and right after it that they didn't want to trade anybody from the major league roster, and they didn't want to trade any of their top prospects. So that to me tells me you didn't want to be involved in a trade. If the only guys you're going to trade are like middling prospects or AAA guys who aren't good enough to get called up to our team, well, why is anybody else going to want them? So if you make it clear that you're not going to trade major league talent and you're not going to trade top prospects, then you don't want to be trading. I mean, that's what you're saying. Even though you let all the fans know and the team know that you were going to make a move to try to improve this club, you basically said, we don't really want to do it unless somebody's just going to give somebody away, which does happen, I guess. But it just seemed like a really bizarre reversal on their attitude. I know that they tried to trade for people and they just didn't get deals done, but you have to wonder how hard did they try if they weren't willing to give up certain pieces, like a Bader who's, in my opinion, proven or at least strongly implied that he's not going to work out at the major league level. So, I don't know, just a little strange. Another thing that's frustrating fans is that Matt Carpenter was basically inserted back into his starting role in the leadoff position of the lineup after going 2 for 26 in his minor league rehab between Springfield and Memphis. 2 for 26. Now, he claims that the results didn't show just how good of swings he was taking and that he felt good. And I don't buy that anymore. I've heard that too long this season in particular, but I've heard it before with him, and not just him, other guys that saying, "Oh, well, I'm taking good swings. Oh, well, I feel good. I'm seeing the ball well. I'm just not finding the gaps, or the shift is affecting me, or whatever. Give it time." Well, to me, he doesn't get that kind of leeway. He was terrible before he got sent down, and he was terrible while he was down there, and now suddenly you think he's going to contribute at the major league level. And oh, by the way, in his first game back, he was 1 for 5 with, I think, 3 strikeouts. So, it's the same old thing with him. Now, on the other side of that, Tommy Edman, who started out so hot, has really cooled off, and, his numbers are very similar to Carpenter's numbers. Yet everybody seems to be clamoring for Edman to play more, and everybody seems to want to, banish Carp to the end of the bench. With eerily similar numbers. Now, the difference I see is that Edman, with being a switch hitter, can be effective against more pitchers than Carp can. I see Edman taking good at bats, learning from previous at bats, adjusting his swing, when he's going to, swing in the count, things like that. Where Carp just is like, what he's going to do. He's going to try to pull it to right field, and he's going to look for his pitch. And, it's, I don't know, when that's working, it seems great, but when it's not working, it's infuriating. Edman, on the other hand, even when he's struggling, he seems to still get involved. When he goes 1 for 4, that one hit was, got him on base. He moved over to third, and then he scored on a sacrifice fly, or he scored from second, or he, scored from first. He's much quicker than Carpenter. He switch hits. He's got a better arm, even though I don't think Edman's arm is anything to, brag about. It's not bad in any sense, but it's just not a tremendous arm. But it's so much better than Carp. He hustles. He just does all the stuff that I don't see Carpenter doing. So even though their numbers are kind of similar, I would vote for Edman all day long over Carpenter. I don't care what we've seen from Carp in the past and his potential. I think he's past his prime, and he's too stubborn to try to change things to work his way out of it. And I just don't think really that he should be playing anymore. But unfortunately, we've got at least 2 more years, if not 3, I forget, that they recently extended him for, which was a major mistake. Another guy who's not really doing enough is Munoz, but they keep giving him opportunities because he kind of did enough early on that they, kept throwing him out there. But they've put him in the outfield. He has proven statistically that he's one of the worst outfielders in all of baseball. He takes bad routes. He misjudges the ball. He doesn't have that great an arm, even though he does when he's playing infield. He doesn't seem to have that great outfield arm. He's just not a good outfielder. I don't think he should be playing out there, and I don't think his bat is good enough to say that he should be, we got to find a spot for him, so let's put him in the outfield. I don't see it that way. Maybe he can turn around, pick it up a little bit offensively, and you will need to put him out there. It's the same thing with Jose Martinez. He's not good defensively, but his bat plays, right? Well, he's streaky as well, and so they've been trying to get some other guys going, like Munoz and Edman, putting them in the outfield over Martinez. But in my opinion, if Munoz is going to play, it needs to be on the infield, and preferably the same thing with Edman. Martinez, he should be in right because his bat plays. Fowler should be in center. We can figure it out in left with O'Neill. Well, now you got Ozuna back. So again, he's going to play every day. So I just don't see why they're forcing Munoz into the outfield. His bat is good, but it's not that good. I don't have stats to back up what I'm saying at this point, but this is just my impression. Another thing I'm seeing that's kind of interesting is Molina coming back slowly. They talked about early August. Now they're talking mid to late August for him coming back. And I'm not really sure why, if it's still the thumb injury thing or if it's his hitting. If it's his thumb or if it's his hitting, if he's not ready to go yet, then why is he catching every day in Memphis? That's what I don't get. If it's his thumb injury, then he surely shouldn't be catching. He's got to let that rest and heal. And if it's okay enough to play and he's hitting okay, then why isn't he up here in St. Louis? Why is he still in Memphis if his hitting is okay? Because we saw Carp wasn't hitting squat and he got called up. And it's not like we needed Carp desperately. Now, I don't think we need Molina desperately either at this point if he's not right, but I just don't understand this double standard with Carp, taking, quote, good at bats, even though he was 2 for 26, and him getting brought back up versus Molina. Now, again, if he's not ready health-wise, then he shouldn't be catching at all. He should be healing and resting. So I just don't get why you would extend him in a playing role in Memphis. I don't really get that at all, but I'll do a little more digging and see if there's some reason that they've stated for why they're doing what they're doing. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, the Cardinals are consistently inconsistent. Now, especially since the streak, I call the streak, that was the winning streak they went on that propelled them into first place, sole possession of first. Um, but since that streak, they lost 2 of 3 to Houston. Then they won 2 of 3 against the Cubs. Then they lost both to Oakland, and now they're heading against the Dodgers for a series there. So it's just this, that's baseball, and that's a small sample size, but it's the way that they're losing those games. They're hitting batters. They're giving up, uh, fastballs down the middle with a bases loaded, like stuff that you just can't do. They're not hitting. They're doing what they did earlier. They reverted back to, scoring very few runs, not hitting in clutch situations or with runners in scoring position. So it's just like it felt like they got out of it, that early to mid season funk that they were in. They got out of it in that win streak, and now they're right back in it again. But it's like one day they're playing great and shutting the other team down, and the next day they're not. And it's not even like, well, okay, that was your starter that day. Then that starter will come out and get rocked the next time out. And your bullpen, who was so good, one day, the same guys a couple days later are so terrible. So it's just, it's frustrating to see. We've said that word over and over again, frustrating. But it's just what we're seeing from the Cardinals at this point, and they need to turn it back around because they're no longer in first place. The Cubs have passed them up, and the Brewers are gonna come calling. If you take a look at the standings, the Cubs are 60-51 in first. Now, when I started recording tonight, this is Monday night before the late night Dodgers game. So the Cubs were losing 2-1 to the A's. The Cardinals are a game and a half back at 58-52. The Brewers are 4 games back, 57-56, but they were currently beating the Pirates pretty handily when I started this. The Reds are 7.5 back with a 52-58 record, and they were beating the Angels. And the Pirates are 12 back with a 48-63 record, and they, as we just said, were losing to the Brewers. So the Pirates are on a spiral downward, man. They had just tailed completely, and the Reds have made a big push. They're winning right now. They could pick up a game definitely on the Cardinals, depending on what we do tonight, but looks like they could pick up a game, against the Cubs too. So, it's all going to tighten up here, and the Cardinals got to get it going. The Brewers and the Cubs both made moves at the deadline. Nothing too flashy, but moves that they needed to make. And, the Cardinals didn't do much of anything. I think they picked up a lefty who already gave up a run in his first appearance. Just nothing really of any substance to help the club. So, fans are going to definitely be frustrated if the Cardinals can't pull away because of their lack of ability to make a deal. Now, it's not for lack of trying, and it's not for lack of spending. They definitely, I think I saw or heard today, they've got the 6th highest payroll in the majors, which is obviously, nothing to scoff at. But it's the fact that they've spent foolishly on guys like Brett Cecil and such a long contract for Fowler, and extending Matt Carpenter when he already had an option year. You didn't have any pressure to extend him when you did. Just making these moves financially that come back to haunt you later and then makes you unable to sign a guy or trade for a guy or whatever. So that's what, fans are going to be very frustrated if this team as constructed doesn't do something. At the beginning of the year, you can excuse not making any moves late in the winter or, in spring, because the GM is going to say, we're going to go with what we got, see how they do, and then we'll make adjustments in the season as needed. Well, they've definitely needed to, and they haven't made those adjustments. And now it's too late. So barring calling up a guy like Arozarena from the minors, who's been tearing it up, has an over 1,000 OPS, but that won't necessarily translate to the big leagues. But when you're struggling with Bader and O'Neill's hurt, and you're putting guys like Munoz and Edman in the outfield, and you got a guy like Arozarena ready to go in the outfield, why not give him a shot? So There's a lot of the moves they've been making lately are confusing from a fan perspective. Even the educated guys who are studying the stats, they're kind of scratching their heads on a lot of these moves or lack of moves. And then you got certain guys that the GM seems to want to keep on the team, on the roster, and then the manager puts them in these bizarre positions of playing outfield when they're not outfielders, or calling up Lane Thomas, who was tearing it up in Memphis, hit a home run in his first game back, and then has been benched ever since for guys in the outfield who aren't outfielders. So just bizarre strategy with the lineup and the roster. Seems like the GM and Schilt are not on the same page. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's hope that they go into this Dodger series and can sweep them like they've already done this year. I don't think anybody expects that, but you never know. They've already done it. So let's do it again. At least let's take 2 out of 3. All right, that's all I got. Just kind of my off-the-cuff take on the status of the Cardinals. I've been pretty busy with my other podcast. We've ramped up season 3 of Get a Load of This, and we're doing twice a week episodes, and it's a lot of editing and stuff. Not to make excuses, but I've also just been kind of down on the Cardinals lately with their inconsistency. As exciting as it was for them to achieve and get into first place, they've been very mediocre since. I've just been kind of unmotivated to come down here and record and talk about them and look up stats when I know what I'm going to find is going to be frustrating, right? But I wanted to get down here and just give my thoughts and see what you guys think. Are you as frustrated as I am? Are you as disappointed? Do you understand the moves or lack of moves that they made? Where do you weigh in on that? So let me know. Get on social media or email and tell me how you feel. All right. That's all I got. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you subscribing. Tell your friends, anybody who would be interested in the Cardinals, to check out the BFIBs Almanac. Until next time, I'm Jared, and this is the BFIBs Almanac.